Is chaplaincy primarily about proselytizing?
Not
No.
about proselytizing.
Making everybody here, of a particular faith?
No,
Not at all.
Elaborate on that.
it's not allowed, actually.
It's not allowed. Okay.
And when I read that email, I thought, hey, this is a good chance to get outside the walls of the church and to, interact with people that I wouldn't maybe be able to interact with in other circumstances.
Definitely.
I think I saw a couple of eye rolls the first time
Yeah.
officers were told by the lieutenants that I would be coming along for a ride along.
Was that me?
No,
Okay.
no.
Well, welcome to another episode of the Wausau PD podcast. I am Captain Ben Graham, the investigations captain here at Wausau PD. And joining me as guests is Pastor Brian Whitaker, one of our chaplains, and Pastor Jen Hoffman, one of our other chaplains. Now, it's 2 out of the 7 chaplains that we have, but I'm thankful that you're here representing the cadre of chaplains that we do have. So the purpose of this podcast is to talk everything chaplaincy, to provide our community sort of lift the veil on what chaplaincy is here, what it means for the community, what it means for our staff. And our hope over the next hour is to talk about you, first of all, to meet you and to give the community insight into your backgrounds. We'll also kind of provide an overview of the chaplaincy program, get into the nuts and bolts like roles and responsibilities, and then hopefully towards the end, we can hear about your perspective on the impact of chaplaincy. I can talk about that as well from my perspective as a staff member here, but we're all also interested in your perspectives from your angle as well. So let's start off with just some introductions. Jen, you just want to describe for our listeners and viewers just a little bit about you? And
I am Jen Hoffman. I'm a pastor in the area. Previously, I was at St. Stephen Lutheran Church downtown, and now I am at Calvary Lutheran out in the country in Merrill. What else do you want to know about me?
where are you from?
Oh, goodness. I grew up in Iowa and came here for my first call in 2015. I was previously a high school English teacher and public speaking teacher before coming to seminary. And then that brought me here. And I've been here ever since.
Now, I imagine that background translates well into pastoral ministry, like
Indeed.
teaching and public
Indeed.
speaking.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, teaching 2 of the most hated subjects transfers well to the church.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has certainly made sermon writing easier, and you work with a lot of parents as much as students when you're a teacher, and you do a lot of that in this work. So it definitely was a leg up in getting started on this crazy journey of ministry.
Yeah. So your roots are, quite deep here in Wausau, having served at St. Stephen in downtown Wausau and getting to know the parishioners, the congregants there, and obviously our community in general.
Yeah.
How did you get connected with Wausau PD?
You
Okay.
You sent out a letter to
We'll
all
talk
of
more
the
about that,
churches,
too.
and
Yeah.
you were saying, we'd really like to start this new chaplaincy program, new-ish. You've had
More of a reboot.
a reboot, yes. And if we were interested to come and learn about it and see if we want to see if it's something that we're feeling called to kind of be a part of. And so we all gathered over in the conference room and we heard about it, and most of us stayed and said, yes, I think this is something that would be a really good extension of our ministry for us, because we're all about helping to provide safe spaces and listening ears for those who see and experience a lot that can add up over time.
Yeah.
And so I felt at your invitation that this was something that I wanted to do and be a part of.
Well, I'm super glad you accepted that call. So
Yeah, I've gotten to meet a lot of people I never would have met otherwise.
it opens up so many
Really,
different doors.
in the community and here at the police department.
Yeah.
So
Well,
it's been
good.
really good.
Well, thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
How about you, Brian?
So
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Brian Whitaker. I'm a pastor at Highland Community Church, and I've been in the area for about almost 22 years now. And I have a wife and 4 kids, almost all adults now. And we started at the same time, under the
did.
same circumstances. So we both got the same communication saying, hey, we'd like to add some chaplains to the department. And I believe there was an initiative in the state that helped with training during that time. So I think a lot of departments brought some chaplains on in 2018, and that was a good thing for policing throughout the state. And when I read that email, I thought, hey, this is a good chance to get outside the walls of the church and to interact with people that I wouldn't maybe be able to interact with in other circumstances.
Definitely. Yeah.
So
Now, Highland has a couple different campuses. What campus are you at?
I'm at the Marathon campus.
Marathon campus. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, yeah. You mentioned your wife and kids.
Yes. Well,
We can always go back.
I
Tell
have
us
a
about your
husband
family.
and 5 children as well. It's wonderful.
Yeah. So on top of, the pastoral obligations, being parents to kids, you had some margin in your life to be able to do things like this too. Maybe not, but
sometimes the margin feels a little smaller than I would like it to.
Yeah,
But it's a good opportunity and worth taking the time. It is all volunteer, in case people don't know that.
yes, it is.
Yes.
It's
You do this for free?
we
we
do.
do.
Oh, man. I knew that, but maybe our listeners didn't. And which, from the bottom of my heart, and I'll probably say this multiple times, thank you. Thank you. The impact that you make here at the department is a big one, and sometimes the thank yous don't get communicated to you when they should. So, before I forget, thank you both. So, well, before we talk about maybe mission goals, get into the number of chaplains, and I'll name the other ones that aren't able to join us here this morning in a little bit. I thought it'd be important to talk a little bit about the history of the chaplaincy program here at Wausau PD. And I'll admit, I've been here for 16, 17 years. I'm terrible at math, somewhere in that ballpark. And there are probably chapters of the chaplaincy history that I'm just not aware of. But what I am aware of is that Chief Bill Brandamore came to us back in 1988 after serving, I think, 26 years with the Detroit Police Department. And so he retired as, I think, an inspector there, and then took the call to become Wausau's police chief back in 1988. And I think that it was in the mid-'90s that Chief Brandamore had this idea of either at that time kind of jump-starting an existing chaplaincy program, or maybe it was altogether new. I don't know. It may be some former officers here at the police department, or even Chief Brandamore will comment on some of the comments on this particular podcast and enlighten us on maybe some more of the history. But nevertheless, he did something that I did, that you talked about, how you received an email or a letter from me. I didn't know he did this, but later on I found out that in the mid-'90s, he had also sent out letters to many of the Wausau area churches soliciting interest in kind of starting up or rejuvenating a chaplaincy ministry. And I think that might have stemmed from maybe some of his history. I think that he grew up in maybe the Milwaukee area and attended a pre-seminary high school, maybe thought about becoming a Lutheran minister himself, but then took a different course into doing a little bit different community service as a member of the Detroit Police Department. But at that time in the mid-1990s, Dwayne Hamilton was one of those pastors that answered the call. I think Dwayne at that time in the mid-90s had 26 years of pastoral experience in states surrounding Wisconsin, and at that point in time had 4 or 5 years on the job at Wausau Bible, just down the road from where we are right now. And I know that he had a family. It was early in his ministry at Wausau Bible, but when he received that letter, just like you received a letter, he was like, this sounds like something that would be good for me and good for our congregation and good for the Wausau Police Department and for the general community. And Dwayne Hamilton served as a chaplain with Wausau PD up until the end, I think, of 2022. So
Yeah.
many years with our agency, and was integral when we sort of jump-started or reinvigorated our chaplaincy program by adding the two of you and others to our cadre of chaplains. And so I think the credit can really go to Chief Brandamore and to Dwayne Hamilton for all the work that they did in getting it started and then maintaining it for all of those years. And so if, Dwayne, you're listening to this, thank you so much. Chief Brandamore, thank you as well. We wouldn't have the program that we have today without them planting those seeds early on and getting this program off the ground. So maybe some mission and goals. Brian, how would you define the mission of our chaplaincy program if you were to kind of boil it down and condense it for us?
Well, largely it's to just encourage the police officers. We talk about the ministry of presence, and not Presents, but Presence. We are present, we are with people, because you kind of have to be where people are in order to have any ability to help them. Mm-hmm. And so our first ministry is really to the officers themselves. That involves ride-alongs, that involves walking through the police department, and I call it a slow walk. I just walk through the offices and the open areas and stuff. And, if somebody catches my eye, I'll sit and chat with them for a minute or however long it takes. Mm-hmm. Secondarily, we minister to the families of the officers. And then as a third wing, we minister to the community, everything from death notifications to community events, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So, but a lot of it is just being present and being ready to serve.
Yeah, that sounds good. And we'll get more into some of the nuts and bolts roles and responsibilities in just a second. But do you have anything to add on that, Jen?
That was very thorough.
As usual, Brian.
I concur.
Good job with that. Well, before we get into roles and responsibilities, how many years now do you two have as chaplains of Wausau PD?
We started
2018.
Yeah, October of 2018, I think.
October, okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So as we already alluded to, I had sent out letters to many Wausau area churches, and we had a good response. I think maybe 10 plus attended sort of an informational session on what is law enforcement chaplaincy, which we'll talk more about in a second. And so over the course of the last 6-7 years, we've had a couple of chaplains come and go. Some were in the military and deployed out to the East Coast. But currently we have 7. The ones that aren't able to join us today, which I'll mention now, is Father Sam Cripps with St. John the Baptist Episcopal in downtown Wausau. Dave Forsyth, who's sort of unique. He's not a pastor, but he's connected with a local church and served for many years as a special agent with the Department of Criminal Investigations, which is an offshoot of the Department of Justice here in the state of Wisconsin. So he comes with a tremendous amount of law enforcement experience, which aids him in connecting with our officers as well. We have Julie Goranson, the former pastor of Grace United Church of Christ. We have Rob Love, who is pastor with Emmanuel Baptist Church. Greg Schmidt, who is pastor at Restoration Church. And then the two of you. Mm-hmm. I didn't miss anybody, did I?
I don't think so.
I think that's everybody. And so you see sort of kind of a wide representation of different churches in the area, and just a shout out and thank you to all those churches that I did mention for allowing your pastors to volunteer their time, which sometimes comes in the middle of your normal work days, to answer calls for death notifications or issues that our staff might reach out to you for to help resolve. And I think that when Bill Brandamore came here in '88, retired then I think in 2005, one of the things that he helped push and move forward was community-oriented policing. And that is the type of agency we are to this day, where we have a mission statement that is up there on the wall. The Wausau Police Department strives for excellence and partners with our community to enhance quality of life. And chaplaincy is a part of that community-oriented policing where we understand that we can't do everything on our own. We can't take care of ourselves necessarily on our own. But if we work together, we can enhance quality of life, our own, but also the quality of life for those that we serve in our community as well. And so I'm thankful for this community-oriented type program, which I think is what chaplaincy is all about. So, nuts and bolts of chaplaincy. Before we talk about what it is, maybe we talk about what it isn't. Is chaplaincy primarily about proselytizing?
Not
No.
about proselytizing.
Making everybody here, of a particular faith?
No,
Not at all.
Elaborate on that.
it's not allowed, actually.
It's not allowed. Okay.
Well, I mean,
We're here to give,
That's not
not to
our-
get. We're not trying to gain people for church.
Right.
We're not
Yeah.
trying to change anybody's religious persuasion. Our main goal is really to help officers handle things in a healthy way.
Yep.
We work alongside the peer support team, which has a different podcast here recently
Yes.
recorded,
Yeah.
just to help officers in dealing with what they deal with on a daily basis, and especially traumatic events or life events.
Yeah. I mean, we can certainly have conversations with officers at their behest
Yes.
in terms of faith matters.
Yeah.
But we're not actively out recruiting, as they say,
Yeah.
in that way.
And I think that can be a misperception
Yeah.
oftentimes when it comes to chaplaincy. And obviously, if the door opens, you have the training and experience to be able to minister in that particular arena, but it's certainly not something that we're forcing upon people.
Right.
So you'd agree with that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Conversations more often deal with just life stuff.
Yep, life.
Marriage, family, finances.
Yeah.
Dealing with an event that's happened, any
Tough
of those kinds of
calls.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we are about, social wellness, financial wellness, emotional, all those different types. And there is an element of the spiritual wellness component too that is vitally important to many of our staff. So to have people that are here like yourselves that are trained and experienced to be able to minister in that particular area is really worthwhile, I think, for us to have.
Also like the diversity among our group. So we have
Yes.
different personalities, different backgrounds, different approaches. So, one officer might not feel as comfortable with me as with Jen, and so that officer might seek Jen out in a certain situation. And by having the plurality of people here available, I think that's a strength.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is one thing that drew me in as a female in ministry is, we make up half the world, females. And there are a lot of female officers here. I watched the podcast that was very good
Yeah.
with some of our female officers. And sometimes people, families on calls, officers gravitate towards women in certain circumstances.
Absolutely.
And so I felt it was really important that we had, Joy and I both felt that, I know strongly about that, and wanted to be able to contribute in that way. Because it is important to have
Very much.
a diverse pool to pull from.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which I don't think is common among law enforcement agencies.
Actually,
if-
to have this many chaplains is not very common either.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I was going. I mean, for the longest time, we had basically one, and that was Dwayne Hamilton until we sort of, had a restart of it a handful of years ago. But most agencies that do have a chaplaincy program usually just have one. And like you're pointing out, the diversity that we are able to offer is fantastic. I think it also having 7 aids in kind of sharing the burden of the workload as
Yes.
well from on-call and other responsibilities that
Yes,
you have.
definitely.
So, well, before we talk about responsibilities that you have to the community as chaplains, let's talk first of all about responsibilities to the department. So, like, what are some of the things that you do for our staff here? Could be professional staff, could be our sworn officers. What are some of the things that you do for them?
well, behind the scenes, I pray for them. But honestly, a lot of what I do is just come in and make my presence known here. Check in with people. How you doing? This morning I checked in with somebody who's been on light duty for a while to see how her sanity was.
Yes.
Waiting to have a baby. So part of what we do is just building relationships. So we come in and we check in or offer to do a ride along, or
so you ride shotgun every once in a while.
Sometimes.
Yes.
Sometimes.
They don't give us a shotgun, though.
They don't.
No.
Not even a water gun. So I think that's one of the biggest things that we do in terms of the department. We also help out with department events as much as we can, and have our own meetings to kind of organize and make sure that we have everything covered the whole year. That's a lot of what we do, along with peer support, critical incident stress management stuff when there's tough calls. We're involved with that. And
so if we have a significant call that we anticipate would have a big impact on our staff, we will have a debrief, a formal debrief with a facilitator, and we'll have chaplains either helping to lead those or just present to be able to have some knowledge of what is going on and to sort of be there for a warm handoff if our staff need to talk with somebody in the moment, or they see your face, they know that you were there, and they might reach out by text or phone call afterwards to help process and come to grips with the fact that what they're feeling is normal. And the
relationships that we build along the way also help so much with that. So if I spend time with an officer over a period of a year and then that really tough call comes, they feel more comfortable reaching out, and that is so worth it. And so, chaplaincy, we do respond, we react, but there's also a proactive element to it of, initiating those conversations and being available and building those relationships so that when a need is here, we have some good communication already established.
Yeah, because ultimately we are another avenue of support. We're another layer of support. So, the more we can build relationships before things happen, the more likely they are, like Brian said, to call us in and lean on us a bit more to help them, to help make their job a little easier.
Now, I would say that law enforcement officers generally can be a little calloused, that maybe there are some barriers that we put up that might be hard to get through.
Never noticed that at
all. Look at this face.
Generally speaking, we talked about ministry of presence. Just, is it something that happens like that where you're able to get into good relationships with our staff here, or has it taken some time?
Depends on the person.
Yeah.
Depends on the person. Some people really jump in there like, you know what? I like that, we can do a ride along and I can just talk and, and other people, they really have to get past maybe a preconceived notion about us wanting to, throw Jesus in their face constantly, and say, we're here to just find out about your life and, how things are going for you and whatever you want to talk about, whatever you're interested in. And if you get over that little hurdle, I would say it's kind of a hurdle.
Yeah.
And they're concerned about our safety too. If we're like on a ride along, they don't want us to get hurt or us to interfere with what they're trying to do. So, we are building a capacity to know that when we're there to assist them. So
but not to get in the way.
Yeah, we do whatever they feel for them, whatever they feel is helpful.
Right.
Sometimes it's stay in the car,
Sometimes it is.
And so that's been a learning curve for everybody because it was new to have so many chaplains.
I think I saw a couple of eye rolls the first time officers were told by their lieutenants that I would be coming along for a ride along.
Was that me?
No,
okay.
no.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, it's been
It's taken time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for some, maybe still they're not comfortable reaching out, and that's okay.
Yeah. Well, and
We're here, but not going to force ourselves.
trust isn't something that, is automatically given on day one.
Right.
We know that working in churches, right? You build trust with people. And why would officers be any different?
Yeah.
So it's expected. But hopefully, over time, walls can come down a little bit more. And people, we just want them to know that we're generally there as a support, as a presence for them. That's our primary focus, our primary goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So ministry of presence here in the department, just being around here, doing some ride-alongs, participating in debriefs, helping out at, our community thank you events and other social wellness events that we might have, anything that is, community-facing or even inward-facing are things that you all help out with. I think that those crisis situations are probably the situations that are most conducive to relationship building, which kind of leads us into the responsibilities that you have to the community in general, which oftentimes comes sometimes in the middle of the night when you're on call and you receive a ring from the patrol lieutenant or dispatch saying, hey, we have a death notification that needs to be delivered, or we had this critical incident and we need you on scene to help provide support to victims and witnesses and things like that. How does the on-call system work here? Either.
So we take a week at a time typically,
Okay.
or maybe even 2 weeks at a time. And during that time period, the lieutenants know that they know who to call if there's a situation that comes up. And especially if it's, the death of a child or something like that, those kinds of calls, I think it really does help when a chaplain is available, both for the community and for the officers. And there have been death notifications where I've shown up and the person has not really been interested in having a chaplain, and that's okay. But I'm still there for the officers and checking in on them and whatever the situation might be and whatever might be needed. Sometimes I stay 15 minutes, sometimes I stay a few hours.
Yeah.
Yes.
And maybe before we dig a little bit deeper into death notifications, we probably should have touched on some of the additional training that you receive. Have you received training in death notifications? Are you certified through any organization?
Well, we're both ICPC members, which is the International
Conference of Police
Chaplains. And we went through the basic training. You and I went through pretty early on.
About the same time, yeah.
And they talk about things like death notifications. We both have kits. I think you had yours with you today. I was bringing mine and spilled coffee on myself and then left it behind. But
we keep go bags.
But
of
we
stuff.
we take go bags, which we learned through that training, just to, if an officer's like, I need a pen, and you're like, I got one right here for you. Here you go. Or you need some gum, or you need tissues. So we learned that through that basic training, and then there's advanced training you can go through to with the ICPC. And I think that all of the chaplains, or most of us, have been through that particular training.
Yep.
Yes.
And then
everybody, I think at this point.
I think everybody has now.
I've done some additional training with QPR, question, persuade, prefer, and peer support. And then I also got certified in critical incident stress management for individual and large group, like we were talking about earlier, when there's a tough call and you need to debrief. So, and that was pretty extensive. So that's some of the training I've done.
And as lead chaplain, Brian, you've had even more training.
I've worked on training on a number of levels. Just went to the national ICPC conference in July. And and in those kinds of situations, there's training in all kinds of scenarios and situations, and a lot of learning, a lot of sharing of what chaplains did in a particular situation, what they learned, and what they might have done differently. just to help us prepare.
Yeah.
But then we also have our training through seminary and, years of counseling up until, even when we started, we had a lot of training coming in. So a lot of family ministry, a lot of, financial. I've done budgets for I don't even know how many people over the years. And those types of things can be put to use here.
Yeah. We also asked the department for some additional training, because most of us aren't used to being on scene.
Right.
And we all wanted to know, how can we not mess up the scene?
Yeah.
Like, what should we not do?
Yeah.
Just to raise our awareness so that we're not causing problems rather than helping support. So the department gave us some additional training on that just so that we could be more informed and better able to help and not
Helpful and not in the way.
Yes, yes. So...
Well, that's a really good segue into, once again, going back into death notifications and some of these crime scenes that our chaplains will respond to. In the middle of a crime scene, what do you expect or what could you expect to do for the officers, first of all?
We'll assist the officers if they've got to talk to somebody and say, hey, your loved one has passed away. We'll check in on officers who are... they've just seen something really awful. I'll just say, hey, how you doing? Or, can I help? Or do you need to come out and take a breath of fresh air? Or, whatever, those kinds of things. Our officers are great and they handle things very, very well. And I don't want to communicate otherwise. But sometimes it helps to have somebody come alongside and say, how can I help? Or whatever might be helpful.
Yeah, they're able to, they're trained in, observation. So they're able to point out for us, identify for us pretty quickly who might need our assistance on scene, whether it's whether it's an officer or whether it's somebody in the community. So that's one of the first things I check in with them is, please tell me the situation first.
Right.
So I'm
you
not
have some idea.
stepping all over somebody. And then where do you want me to go? And they generally know where we'll be most helpful, which is oftentimes helping community members, on the emotional side of things, so that they can do all the technical stuff that they need to do.
Right.
Yeah, very often we're with the family while the officers are doing their job, and we're trying to help the family just deal with the immediate grief and uncertainty of what's even happening, how long is this going to take, and that frees up the officers to do their work.
Yeah.
Yeah, because oftentimes the notice we deliver is... results in one of the worst days of that person's life. And I always found it super comforting when I had to go and deliver terrible news like that to have a chaplain by my side. Maybe sometimes to deliver the actual notification. Sometimes I would deliver it. It just depended upon the situation. But knowing that a chaplain was there so that grieving family member wasn't left alone while I then went on to what is necessary, and that's the investigation of the death is a part of why you're here, and I'm so thankful that both of you serve in that.
And maybe people listening don't know that even if it's a very natural death, even if it's something that's very obviously, somebody died in their sleep or whatever, there still has to be some kind of investigation. Right. And so, and again, that will often leave the loved ones wondering, well, what are they doing in there? You just have to be able to check off the list and show that, there wasn't anything of any concern that would have led to that.
Yeah. Yeah. And some officers are very comfortable delivering that news, hard as it can be, and some aren't. So we're willing to both be support or help deliver difficult news because that's one thing that we are trained to do.
And I think sometimes you're the hands and feet of all sorts of different things at the scene. You might be there for the support of the family or for the support of the officers running and getting certain things like water.
I was just going to say water. It's a big one.
Or just being with the family while staff is doing things in and amongst the scene as well, which we're super grateful for. Maybe it'd be worthwhile in the same lane of just talking about crime scenes and death notifications to maybe share any anecdotes or personal stories, not getting too specific on things, but just the impact upon you and maybe the impact that you've seen upon those that you've been able to serve, whether it's officers or the public, when you're answering that call to kind of go out to one of our more critical events.
Sure. Well, one of my very first call with the department was a death notification that came in the middle of the night for suicide. And that's always
Tough.
really tough. And the officer on call was wanting me to deliver the news just because of the whole situation. And so I showed up and helped do that. But we're really, the reason it sticks in my memory is because the family then reached out to me afterwards to see if I would do the funeral. And that's something that's happened more than once. And I think it speaks to how important it is to have people in that situation, and officers fill this role a lot, but we also help with it, to know that there are people there that care about them and are caring for them in that moment. That's the toughest moment. And that, we are also members of the community. So our help sometimes extends beyond the actual call to into their lives when they need us. And that's been I think a real blessing for us, because they're people that we, like I said, we probably never would have run into before, and we happened to run into them on the worst day, and it was meaningful enough for them that they wanted us to come back and be with them again for, like a funeral.
There were two that I can think of calls where I was called in for a death where turned out to be somebody in my own congregation.
Oh, okay.
And so I was able to be there for the family, and it was an added blessing that they were people that, generally already knew me. And so I was able then to walk with them through those days that followed and help them through. And, talking with the kids about a parent that died is always a challenge. And it's stuff that we've done enough in our own ministry years that, we're comfortable just getting down on the floor and trying to explain things at a kid level. And whatever those situations might be.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily any easier, because it's always terrible news to deliver.
Yeah.
Like, it's never something you want to have to deliver, but it's necessary. And I was going to add, one of the things that we do in those situations is help officers connect these families with meaningful people in their own communities, their own churches or mosques or synagogues, or if they're people of faith, who can we call for you to bring you here?
Because you're not looking necessarily to replace.
No, that can bring you comfort. Yeah. Like, who is there somebody you would like us to call? We do a lot of that. Because when you're distressed, you're not always capable of it in that moment. So we're there to be calm and say, who can we contact for you, and put them in contact with,
or even their family members, or we'll just stay with them until the sister-in-law from an hour away can arrive and be a comfort, or their faith leader or whoever would be of benefit.
Yeah.
You oftentimes serve as a bridge.
Bridge is a great way to put it.
To either friends, family, or whatever church affiliation they might have in the moment. It does happen on occasion where somebody has an affiliation with a church, but they're not able to reach somebody in the middle of the night. And so that's where chaplains can come in and at least be there for them in the moment, and then do a handoff to their pastor, priest, rabbi, whoever, in short order. So well, thank you both for sharing. I think that those impacts are really the tip of the iceberg, because I've heard other chaplains here at the PD provide similar stories of being able to minister post-incident in the form of, being part of the funeral, sometimes officiating the funeral. helping to connect to their clergy, their families, and it's always nice to be able to hear those stories and to be able to pass those stories back along to you, to be encouraged that the work you're doing is making a difference and it's truly valuable. I've also heard that some of our chaplains have even performed weddings of our staff.
Yes. Yes.
So it's neat to be able to see the overflow of your ministry in that area as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that can be an exciting time. I got to do one wedding.
Yeah,
that was a joy.
Yeah.
We get to see all the babies.
Oh yes,
That's my favorite when the pictures of the babies come in.
Yeah. Any other stories kind of stick out in your minds?
There are things that happen internally. Just sitting with officers through particularly tough times. Anytime there's an officer-involved shooting, even if it's absolutely, even if they've done everything exactly right, there still has to be an investigation just to be able to prove that. And so during that time, that officer really can't talk about the incident, and they're kind of waiting for investigators to complete their work, which sometimes could take quite a long time, multiple hours. And so to be able to sit with those officers during those times, I count that a real privilege.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
There was another situation that was a mass shooting event. I don't want to overstate what it was, but very shortly after we came on board.
Mm-hmm.
And so a few of us responded to the hospital where there were victims being taken and family members arriving. And then others that responded to the police department, and we deployed around the area to meet various needs that needed to be taken care of in that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing when you provide space for people, provide that ministry of presence.
Mm-hmm.
The things that people will feel comfortable sharing with you that maybe they didn't realize was weighing on them, which is a step towards healing when you can talk about those things, especially with a virtual stranger like us.
Right.
So there's things that hang around, like if you've been involved in a shooting, you remember where it was and you remember when it was, and it's an anniversary like any other, and sometimes you happen to be with somebody like on a ride along on the day that happens, and then you find out about it, and it's been a privilege to be allowed into some of that as a chaplain in the department, and to see the impact this job has on these officers day in and day out. It's one of those jobs where you have to kind of shove down a lot, I think, to function sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's really important to, allow them to process that in whatever way they're comfortable with us. It's not forced.
Right.
It just kind of it shows it peeks out every now and then.
Yeah.
And that's I think when you're talking about the health of officers, that's always a positive thing.
I'm glad that you bring that out. Would you say that after now serving a handful of years as a chaplain, that your experience in Wausau, or the way in which you see Wausau, has changed a little bit?
Yeah, I think probably so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are elements of Wausau that I didn't know existed, as far as, some of the communities and some of the practices of people that weren't already in my sphere of influence, I guess.
Yeah.
But then also just, even just getting to know the law enforcement culture, for me, has been very helpful. I mean, when I came in, I didn't come in as one who was ready to give. I needed to learn a lot first,
Right.
and to learn about the culture, and then. But now we also try to catch new officers as they're coming on board, and even begin establishing relationships right from the get-go, and feel like we've hit a little bit more of a rhythm, at least. Would you say that?
Yeah. Coming in, I think I told you this before, Ben. When I came in, my history with law enforcement was almost like I don't have police officers in my family. I don't have. It's not something that I'm familiar with, and in my head, I'm like, it's this machismo culture that's like, we don't have feelings and we're just taking care of business. And there was a lot happening in the media at the time, too, around law enforcement. And I was like, one of the things that drew me to this was, when I don't understand something, to learn about it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And being a chaplain has allowed me access to truly learn about, the work of being a police officer, and truly the scope of what they do, either because it's asked of them or because they voluntarily do it, is much bigger than I ever thought. And it's been a great reminder that police are people too.
Yes.
They're just people, just like you and me, and good days and bad days. And
they leave work and go home to their families and have normal family interactions and stresses and stuff.
So anything we can do to help make that a healthy thing is good, because this profession, more than like any first responder, they carry a lot. They carry all those really traumatic things. Far more than I realized prior to this. And so that's been really eye-opening for me, and a good growing moment for me personally, selfishly, a growing moment for me.
Well, that resonates with me. I mean, I remember, just speaking with some transparency, after a couple years on the job, driving in our personal vehicle with my wife, and I don't know how many kids that we had at that point, but we were driving over the Bridge Street Bridge. And I just remember thinking to myself, man, I wish I could go back and see Wausau once again through the eyes of a child. Because I grew up here in Wausau, but I was blind to some of the issues that Wausau faces, that really any community faces.
Right.
And thankfully, I had the luxury as a child of not being exposed to a lot of crime and the criminal element and a lot of the depravity that is, amongst us. And at some point, I remember somebody either sharing a story or reading about how it's kind of like a tapestry that is up in a museum. You go and you sit in the gallery and you look at this tapestry up on the wall, and it looks beautiful. And that's what Wausau is. It's truly a beautiful place. But our officers are oftentimes on the backside of that tapestry. And if you've ever seen the backside of a tapestry,
it's a mess.
It is a mess. It's this indiscernible string thread that's all over the place. And when our officers, day after day, night after night, are exposed to the backside of the tapestry, it's easy to get down. It's easy to become pessimistic about the world in which we live in. And you didn't use the word, but you talked about triggers, like certain things within the community that can lead to things like depression and kind of being down in a glass half full type of person. I mean, even on my drive home, I live here in the city about like 1.4 miles away from here. And if I were to drive home, I could take McIntosh right here. And just a block away, I'm looking at it right now, I can be reminded of the police chase that ended in the parking lot that led to a foot pursuit and going toe-to-toe with a drunken felon. And then I go another block, and I'm reminded of the time where we had a veteran that was struggling, that had used his AR and turned his backyard into Swiss cheese. And I had to negotiate with him on the phone for a very long period of time. And thankfully, we had a peaceful surrender and resolution of that case. But then I drive 3 blocks to the north, and I'm reminded of a sweet old man that was bludgeoned to death in his garage.
Yeah.
And then I go 2 blocks to the north, and I'm reminded about that middle schooler that was riding his bike down the hill and died as a result of a traffic crash.
Yeah.
And then I pull into my driveway, and I'm reminded of the individual that broke into my garage and stole stuff from me. So, there's all sorts of these triggering things that could become a big issue unless we're surrounded by friends and family that love us, and chaplains that love us, and a peer support team here at the police department, which is really robust. And we have this family that cares for one another. And when we see things that maybe aren't quite right, we're able to have resources at hand to be able to minister to those specific needs. So I just wondered, as a chaplain over these years, if you've found yourself driving by a particular house saying, "Oh, I was at that house," or "I was at that intersection," or because you're sometimes seeing the backside of that tapestry a lot too.
Yeah.
Although I have to say, I appreciate the officers really do try to protect us. So, I've arrived on scenes of a death, or, if there's a suicide or something, I've actually been physically kind of bumped out of the way as I've walked onto the scene so that I wouldn't go into the area where the body was still, because they're protecting me from having to see more than I need to see. And I appreciate that too. Then I, move in and interact with the family.
Anything else you want to add on your motivations or inspiration for getting into chaplaincy and staying in chaplaincy? We've touched on it a little bit, but
we have. One story I haven't shared here is my first wife died in a traffic accident 20 years ago. And I remember that night hearing the news. At that time, I was the chief of police. It was one of the local townships. And he grabbed my senior pastor on the way and came and talked to me. And I've always appreciated having, right in the middle of that horrible moment, having people that I knew cared about me. And so this is our chance to be that for others as well. And that's a real privilege.
And for me, I try to be the face of joy when I'm here.
You are. And I'm thankful for it, Jen.
I mean, one of my favorite things is when I'm with an officer and they do something in the course of, their job that ends in joy. Joy at finally solving this case that has taken a long time, or bringing closure to a family that's been searching for answers for a long time, or receiving like a note from somebody in the community who says, I really appreciated what you did. And the joy that comes with that, because I think that's what keeps officers going, are those moments, those positive moments that they encounter during the course of their day, that, you put them in your pocket, you build them up so that you can draw on them on your worst days.
Right.
And being able to witness that is also a blessing, I think, for me, probably for you too, and all of our chaplains. It helps to remind us this is why we do what we do. And so joy is why I stay in it.
I love that.
Right? Because it's needed.
It is.
Hope and joy. And Hope is my middle name. So.
There you go.
And it's Joy is my sister's. We're twins.
Yeah. I love it. I didn't know you were a twin.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah.
Learned something.
So there you go.
Anything you want to add on that, Brian?
I don't think so. She said I will.
All right. Well, I think before we bring this episode of the Wausau PD podcast to a close, we've talked a lot about the impact of the chaplaincy program, but is there anything else that you want to add on whether impact to the department, impact to the community, or really anything generally that you think the community should know that we haven't talked about that you think would be helpful to our listeners and viewers?
I've heard some feedback from community members when I've done some ride-alongs who expressed gratitude for the department even having this available. I was on a particular call and we were trying to find somebody, and we were talking to a family member who really was appreciative that the department had taken these steps to not only give support for their officers, but also provide additional support when they go out in the community in speaking with community members. So I think it's a growing in appreciation, I think, among certain people who experience us when we are doing, what we're here to do. So that's been a positive thing that I have noticed. Because officers are our primary focus, but you can't divorce an officer from their job and the community,
right?
Because they're all linked. So that's something that I would say
How about
that
you,
I've
Brian?
noticed.
Yeah, I just, it's a privilege to be able to come alongside the officers and to be available in the community. People can call on us or not. I think at most scenes, the officers do offer to the family, would you like us to call a chaplain? And if they say yes, whoever's on call will show up. And we'll do our best to serve in that environment.
Absolutely.
I think a number of people probably say, oh, no, I'm fine. And that's okay if that's the choice that they want to make. But we certainly are available and ready to help if that's desired.
And I hope that we've created or painted really a clearer picture of what to expect when that question is asked. Like, would you like a chaplain? Often comes with, I don't want any, faith-based,
Right.
Assistance at this moment in time. But hopefully we've clarified that you're there for that, of course, if they want it. But so much more, just having somebody there who is compassionate and caring and can be there to provide you with Kleenexes and water and help connect you with family members when you might not be in an emotional state to be able to relay messages.
And I think it's important to note that we have these badges. They say chaplain. We're not sworn.
Correct.
We're not.
We're not law enforcement officers.
We're not law enforcement officers. We don't have authority, the same authority that they have. So, I think sometimes people see this and think, oh, officer.
Yeah.
But we're not actually sworn. And that is an important distinction for people. I think it sometimes makes people more comfortable to talk to us because we aren't sworn officers in certain circumstances, and to offer care in that way. Makes a difference sometimes, but just to avoid confusion, because I don't know if we said that at the beginning.
Yeah,
Right.
And I think in certain situations, you have under state statute privilege where whether it's a community member or a staff member here that's sharing with you in private, that is an information that you can then pass along to us, right?
Yes.
So, well, I'll just recap in giving a shout out once again to former Chief Bill Brandamore and for Dwayne Hamilton, who were really integral in getting this off the ground back in the mid-'90s, and then also to former Chief Ben Bliven, who was the one that bent my ear for a second, saying, hey, I think that we could kind of put the AED on the chaplaincy program and give it a little bit more vigor and life. And I want to thank the two of you, along with our other chaplains who received that letter and were willing to respond and come into the crazy world of law enforcement.
And likewise, thank you, because you have been a supporter and an equipper, and
Definitely.
You've helped us get the training we need, helped us get the resources we need, so that we can feel, like we're able to contribute in a significant way.
Yeah.
And so your constant support, the department's constant support, has been very helpful in making this work well.
Well, it's the least I could do or the department could do. Once again, you're not getting paid for this. So maybe a free meal every once in a while, but there's a lot of out-of-pocket stuff that you guys endure that you don't end up getting paid back for. And it's really a testimony to why you're here. because you love people, whether that's the people here at the police department or it's the people out there in our community. And we want to be able to minister and serve and, like our mission talks about, enhance quality of life in some of those darkest moments that our community faces, while also being there at some of the brightest, when it's weddings and a variety of other things as well. So,
And babies.
Yes.
And babies.
thank you so much for listening here today or viewing it, whichever platform you're using. I would just ask you to like and subscribe, and if you have the ability to rate this particular podcast, to give it a 5-star review.